then is the order that you're supposed to issue marriage license.
And we're not issuing marriage
The
licenses
Supreme
today.
Court denied your stay.
We are not issuing marriage licenses today. So
Based on what?
I would ask you all to
Why are you not
go ahead
issuing
and
marriage licenses today?
Because I'm not.
Under
Why?
whose authority are you not issuing
Under
licenses?
God's authority.
Did lawyers tell you?
I don't
Did
believe
God
in your
tell you
God.
to do this? Did God
I
tell
don't
you
believe
to
in
treat
your God.
us?
I don't
like
believe in your
this?
I've
God.
asked you all to leave. You are interrupting my
You can call the
business.
police if you want us to leave. You can call the police. I pay your salary. I pay your salary. I pay you to discriminate against me right now. That's what I'm paying for. That's what I'm paying for. I'm paying for this memory with my partner that I love, that I've been with for 17 years. What's the longest you've been with someone, that you've been married to someone?
I'm asking you to leave.
I'm not leaving.
Okay, you all
I'm asking you.
just
I'm
push
not
back
leaving.
away. You all are
I'm
more
not
welcome
leaving.
to stay. Just
I
push
can't
back
help
away
that
from
the
the
president.
counter.
No.
Just push back
We're
away
not
from the
leaving until
counter.
we have a license. We're not leaving
Then
until
you're
we
going
have
to
a
have a
license.
long
Do your
day.
job.
Well,
Today.
call the police. When you come, I will ask them to arrest you.
Do your job.
Call the police! Call the police! Is this what you want to remember? That you stood up for this?
That's what I
That
said.
your children have to look at you and realize that you're bigots and you discriminate against people?
Oh, nothing.
Is that what you want? Is
Stand
that
up
what
for
you want?
God and God's word. Right? Oh.
God does not
God doesn't run the government.
God doesn't run the government. This is not a house of God. It's the people's house.
It's absolutely time to go to court, and it's time to get her out of that office. And whether a person is Christian, whether they are of any other belief, if they can't see the lawlessness of what she's doing, then they're just flagrantly ignoring the truth.
Kim Davis sits behind bars for taking a stand and refusing to issue marriage licenses to anyone in her tiny Kentucky county. In doing so, she's become a national symbol for many who oppose gay marriage because of their faith.
Under whose authority are you not issuing licenses?
The gay couple suing Davis had asked that she be fined, but in a surprise move, the federal judge decided to put her in jail instead, saying just a fine wouldn't be enough to bring about her compliance. At the last minute, Davis rejected a deal to allow her deputies to process same-sex marriage licenses that could have prompted her release.
She's been ordered to stay there until she's willing to change her mind, until she's willing to change her conscience about what that belief is.
Within hours of the judge's order, several Republican presidential candidates declared their support for Davis. Mike Huckabee said it removes all doubt of the criminalization of Christianity in our country. Who will be next? Pastors, photographers, caterers, florists. This is a reckless, appalling, out-of-control decision that undermines the Constitution and our fundamental right to religious liberty. And Ted Cruz said, today, for the first time ever, the government arrested a Christian woman for living according to her faith. This is wrong. This is not America. Hillary Clinton weighed in saying government officials should uphold the law, and the White House said, the success of our democracy depends on the rule of law, and there is no public official that is above the rule of law. But a Wall Street Journal editorial responded, we don't recall President Obama insisting on the rule of law when his then Attorney General Eric Holder announced in 2011 that he wouldn't defend challenges to what was then the law, the Defense of Marriage Act. Protesters, both for and against Davis, are up in arms in Kentucky.
If you can't do your job, resign.
She cried. She did a whole sob story, but she was more not apologetic to what she still had to do. She still wasn't. She didn't care. She was almost ruining families. Everybody's got their own version of a family, and she's ruining them.
We still love you.
He said that he did respect her religion, he respected her opinion, but it's law, and he wasn't going to give her a fine because she would just get out of it and would continue to do what she's doing. So he's going to let her sit there And so she decides to do marriage licenses.
Now, I do believe that religious freedom has suffered a major blow today. A major blow. There is absolutely nothing to hold back homosexuals and gay marriage from coming next into Casey County and to Whitley County.
More horrific descriptions of the scenes taking place in Planned Parenthood clinics where aborted babies are harvested and sold for medical research.
Rats are treated better. There are better protocols for rats in research than there are for these children.
This is from the latest undercover video released by the Center for Medical Progress.
I literally have had women come in and they'll go in the OR and they're back out in 3 minutes. And I'm going, what's going on? Oh yeah, the fetus was already in the vaginal canal whenever we put it on stirrups. It just fell out.
That's the procurement manager for Advanced Bioscience Resources, a company that CMP says has harvested and sold aborted baby body parts for more than a decade. In a recent letter to Congress, Planned Parenthood admits that ABR pays them $60 per specimen. Selling tissue from aborted babies is a federal crime. The scandal has prompted a public outcry, and members of Congress have proposed legislation to cut taxpayer funds for Planned Parenthood. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says such a bill will never pass as long as President Obama is in office. The Obama administration is giving Planned Parenthood $1 million in grants through Obamacare. It comes even as Congress prepares to investigate the growing scandal of illegal harvesting and selling of baby body parts at Planned Parenthood clinics. Next week, the House Judiciary Committee begins hearings surrounding the evidence presented by a series of undercover videos. They show Planned Parenthood executives discussing prices and methods for obtaining baby body parts. 2 other committees will also hold hearings this month. Meanwhile, a new study by the Media Research Center shows network news cares more about pandas than aborted babies. In a 3-week period in August, ABC, NBC, and CBS News spent 29 minutes talking about the pandas born at the National Zoo that month. They spent only 24 minutes on the Planned Parenthood scandal in the 7 weeks after the story broke. Anchors even call pandas babies before birth, but call unborn humans fetal tissue.
A group of black pastors and pro-life advocates gathered in front of the National Portrait Gallery to demand the removal of the bust of the late Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, and some critics say a racist.
The controversial bust has been on display since 2010 in the museum's Struggle for Justice exhibit alongside figures like Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. Those protesting the bust argue, how can a woman who advocated for the use of eugenics in blacks and minorities be on display with these civil rights heroes?
When Bishop E.W. Jackson learned the bust was part of the exhibit, he assembled a group called Ministers Taking a Stand to fight for its removal.
She began her career trying to reduce the populations of black and other minorities through eugenics, which meant forced or coerced sterilization. She referred to black people and others as inferior, people who should be banned from having children, and she also referred to them as human weeds and human waste.
Pastor Iverson Jackson of Zoe Bible Church in Little Rock, Arkansas, urged the crowd in front of the gallery to join the fight against this hurtful symbol.
This symbol, this portrait, this bust of Margaret Sanger is destroying this country because of its racist spirit. So we stand together here today to say Margaret Sanger's bust must go.
Museum spokeswoman Bethany Bentley has said the statue will not be removed and that the gallery is meant to display significant people who represent the full spectrum of the American experience.
The children's publishing giant Scholastic has come out with a pro-transgender book for children. It tells the story of 10-year-old George, who says he doesn't feel like a boy, so he wants everyone to know he's really Melissa. The book is written by a transgender author, and it's targeted at 3rd to 7th graders. National Public Radio reports Scholastic sent the book to 10,000 teachers, children's librarians, and took the author to major book fairs as well. The book was originally called Girl George, but Scholastic changed the title just to George so it would be more acceptable to a wider audience. Critics say books like this will only create new confusion for young elementary school-age children.
Just before 4 o'clock, witnesses heard gunshots on the south side of the Sac City campus.
And I heard some say, pow, 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 like that. I could see one of them was down on the ground.
Dozens of students heard and some saw the gunshots.
People were screaming. See, some kids come over here and they got scared to come over here like for protection.
Bystanders began CPR, followed by arriving campus police on the worst-hit victim, but it was too late. Another man was hit several times but is expected to survive. This man was barely grazed by a bullet and was held by police for questioning.
Interview everybody, including the victims, any possible witnesses, including, any look into the possibility of there being surveillance or cameras out here.
Police extremely tight-lipped about what happened, backtracking on an earlier description, later able to provide only this on a possible suspect.
The suspect is described as a male adult with short, dark hair.
As police searched for the shooter, the campus was locked down while students stayed locked inside darkened rooms.
They lock us in the room and turn off the lights. And we've been sitting there for like an hour and a half. We watching the news in class and seeing that somebody died. Yeah, that's scary.
Students said it took 45 minutes for the school to send out a text alert.
Lieutenant Joe Glinowitz gunned down while on patrol in Illinois. Texas Sheriff's Deputy Darren Goforth dies in a hail of 15 bullets. Louisiana State Trooper Stephen Vincent shot in the head, then taunted after stopping to help a stranded motorist. Cold-blooded murders that add to a horrifying recent pattern. 7 law enforcement officers shot to death in a month. 24 officers shot and killed so far this year across America.
In every instance, it's been an act of cowardice.
Though the motivation behind the attacks may be varied, the high number has prompted the Attorney General to issue a stern declaration.
The targeting of police officers is totally unacceptable, and we will continue to stand up for the safety of our officers wherever they serve.
Get him out of the car! Police union officials and law enforcement experts say several factors have formed the so-called perfect storm of hostility toward police. The string of police brutality cases like Eric Garner's death and the killing of Walter Scott, shot in the back by a South Carolina policeman, have fanned the anger against cops.
Is police behavior a factor here? Police behavior is unquestionably a factor. We are in an era of cell phone video that is ubiquitous. And so mistakes, heavy-handedness by the police, we can expect to be collected and retransmitted many, many times. So the police have to be smarter.
Police advocates say a saturation of media coverage has contributed to the spike, and they believe civil rights groups bear some responsibility. That chant from Black Lives Matter protesters this week in Minnesota angered many in law enforcement.
We heard the chants from Black Lives Matter organizers or protesters just this weekend after the death of Deputy Goforth down in Texas, chanting in what sounds like a pro-police attack posture.
DeRay McKesson from Black Lives Matter says the recent killings of police are upsetting, but shouldn't be politicized.
The only charge rhetoric that I've heard has been about accountability for the police, accountability for a profession that has refused any attempts to be accountable for the things that happen to them.
Now, police advocates say officers may be more hesitant to respond strongly to threats, like in one recent case in Alabama, where a detective says he didn't want to be the next cop scrutinized in the media.
Didn't act by his own admission when the perpetrator bulled his way out of the car, took the officer's weapon and pistol whipped him almost to death with it.
We begin with the urgent search outside Chicago. At least 100 investigators now moving in, staking out rooftops. The search growing for 3 suspects. The images of the all-out hunt these past 24 hours. Helicopters searching by air, but now they fear the suspects might have slipped away.
With the backing of the last senator needed by the White House, President Barack Obama is now sure that the conclusion of the nuclear talks with Iran will be kept alive in Congress. Barbara Mikulski of Maryland was the 34th senator who threw her weight behind the achievements of the Vienna talks. Mikulski claimed the JCPOA is the best way to curb Iran's pathway to nuclear weapons. In this way, Obama can use his power to veto a possible Republican-led rejection of the nuclear conclusion in Congress. The U.S. president needs 41 votes in favor of the JCPOA to block a disapproval resolution at Congress. The U.S. Congress is to vote on a resolution disapproving the JCPOA by September 17th.
Certainly seeing things that are taking shape right now, things that are happening today.
Yes.
We could see how just one little spark can ignite something.
One major thing, bam,
and
we're off the edge.
overnight,
We're off the edge.
overnight,
wow,
what you knew today no longer exists.
Now, let's talk about this for a moment, because we've talked about the parallels of America with ancient Israel on a previous program. On another previous program, we talked about the American parallels with the Roman Empire. Now, having seen those parallels and knowing that we are headed in the historical direction of both of those empires at this point, how does it play? How do these two things play? Number one, the fact that East and West seldom have the same authority. When one falls, the other rises. Right. When the other falls, the other rises. East and West.
Right.
The fact that we are, and everybody sees this, declining in the eyes of the world, and the East is coming to power. China is now the #1 economy. We're not, for example. How does that come into play in the cycle we're in? Let's answer that first. What do you think?
All right, let me say this, and then I'll get to that, because it connects. There is a principle that we discuss in the book where if God removes his presence, if God lifts his hand, if the hedge comes down, if God hides his face from his people, all of those things are saying the same thing. And God removes his presence, that means another presence is going to come in. If God's people will not revere him and honor him as king, in a manner of speaking, he abdicates that throne, and another king, another prince comes in. In fact, there's a word that's used in the text in Scripture, in 1 Samuel specifically, chapter 2, that it says, you will see an enemy or a foe in my dwelling place. And the word there appearing in Hebrew is zar.
Oh, hey, when this was in the book, I was stunned.
Yeah.
Didn't know it, and everything, so many places in the Bible ties into this. Go ahead and share a little bit.
Well, again, God says, and I'm conveying this to us as Americans, because when the revolution began, the cry was, we have no king but Jesus. You know, so if we have neglected and turned away from the God of our fathers, if we've turned away from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he says, I'm going to hide my face from you. I'm going to remove my presence from you. And here's what's going to happen. It's going to open the door for an enemy to come in. And that word, again, in Hebrew is zar. That's right, zar, spelled in English T-Z-A-R. The Hebrew word for prince is sar, S-A-R. Consider this, Perry. Caesar, C-A-E-S-A-R. Kaiser, K-A-I-S-A-R.
Oh, wow.
Tsar, T-S-A-R. Every one of those titles is given to a tyrant and to a despot who never has God's people's best intentions in mind. All right, so now, whether that is among us or whether that's rising in the East, because as you said, you can't have an Eastern power ruling the world and a Western power ruling the world. And so if we have been that superpower, but the Bible describes that there's going to be another superpower in the end of days, and we believe in the East, that means something happens in the West. And so in the same apples and oranges way, if we vacate that position as being the world's superpower, the dominant power, it's going to open the door for another dominant power, and it has to be because this has broken down. This has ceased to be, at least in the form that we've known it, in the way that we've known it.
And let me reiterate something you just said, because people would say, no, wait a minute, how could another power arise? Let's say if it was a dictator who's slaughtering people, murdering people, how could they arise? Because the West normally, let's say the West being Britain, the UK, the United States, France, etc., which are considered Western powers, and especially in the Middle Eastern mindset, they would come to the rescue. But we have to understand something. That's what Bill's saying, that for the East And there are kings of the East in the book of Revelation. They are the power source and the power force of the tribulation. The West is not mentioned. There's no mention of kings of the West. There's no mention of the West at all, hardly in prophecy. I mean, it's just not there. The West being specifically the United States, we have Canada, the U.S., we've got also Latin America is considered the Western Hemisphere. And you've got Britain, the UK, etc. But something has to happen. Bill, can we go there and just for a moment, if I were to ask you, speculate to me 2 or 3 things that could happen in the West, specifically America, that could affect us to the point that we don't get involved in the Gog and Magog war, we don't get involved in protecting Israel in the future, what would you say it would be?
Well, let's keep this in mind. Sun sets in the west. The light sets in the west. And when the light sets, or the sun sets, that's when the moon, the crescent moon, rises.
Listen to that.
All right?
And crescent, let's just be honest, is an emblem of one of the world's religions, Islam.
And what do we see going on in Iraq and Syria and all these places?
ISIS.
Okay, so what could happen here? Perry, I believe it is happening here. You know, we may be in the embryonic stages, but I believe it's happening here. We are collapsing under the weight of political correctness, overtaxation, immorality, redefining what is law, redefining what is covenant. And all of these things are coming together to produce a perfect storm. And so we just had a situation recently where, and I'm not going to get into the politics of this, but where a grand jury decision didn't go the way that some people thought it should.
Right.
And whether you agree, whether you disagree, that's not the point. The point is this: look what it triggered. And it triggered all...
One decision.
One decision. It triggered buildings and businesses being set on fire, people's lives being consumed in flames.
And the thing was, it's people that had no bearing on this.
And people who didn't even live there.
They just went mad and said, I'm going to burn this guy's car, I'm going to burn his business up.
People who didn't
live there. That's a great point to make.
And so from that, it spread to other cities in the United States. All right, so that's just one situation. Now, extrapolate that out when people can't get the basic necessities of life.
Right.
You know, there's a natural calamity of some type, or there is a political upheaval, or what have you. And a lot of people want to think, oh, this could never happen in America. You know what? We're living in a day and time where things are happening right now that I never thought would happen
like
in America.
Oklahoma, that woman being beheaded.
Right.
And you know, let me talk about this for a moment.
Marching forward, 70 years on. It's more than a celebration for a country that suffered and won. The war of resistance was the worst humiliation. It's also the greatest strength for China.
For the sake of peace, China will continue on the path of peaceful development. The Chinese nation and its people have always treasured peace. No matter how strong or developed China becomes, it will never resort to hegemony, expansionism. It will not recreate and force the painful history it went through upon other nations.
President Xi Jinping highlights the sacrifice of the Chinese people. He stressed that looking back is to enable moving into a brighter future. World leaders and foreign representatives were there to share the big day. Xi Jinping went on to inspect over 10,000 Chinese troops and more than 500 vehicles. China says the parade is to show its capability and determination to defend its sovereignty and world peace. 50 Chinese formations took part. The veterans were at the forefront. The parade was the tribute to the victims of the war. China was the main eastern battlefield in World War II. They were followed by what's known as the heroes' troops in the war. These troops have become the key strength of today's army. 17 foreign formations also marched at Tiananmen Square. Most of their countries were China's allies during the war. Displaying new weapons and equipment is a tradition for parades. This one featured some of PLA's main hardware. All of them are made in China. Most were making their public debut. This transparency reflects China's defense achievements and its growing confidence on the world stage. China says it will never allow the wartime trauma to happen again. And a rising nation is for its own peace and that of others.
China's massive military parade in Beijing today delivered a very clear message far away to America. On grand display in the Chinese capital, new weapons, which U.S. officials believe are designed specifically to target U.S. military assets. A new ballistic missile with the range to strike the U.S. naval base at Guam, earning it the nickname the Guam Killer. A new anti-ship ballistic missile, which analysts call the Carrier Killer, unveiled today for the first time. And high above, a flyover by China's new J-15 fighter, soon to be deployed on China's own new aircraft carrier, its first. All this today watched not just by China's elite, but Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Pentagon brushed off the show of force.
People know the strength of the United States, the strength of our military, and I think it's safe to say that we don't need to display it at parades necessarily for people to understand what the United States is capable of.
Still, as President Obama gets ready to welcome the Chinese president to Washington for a full state visit later this month, China is increasingly flexing its military muscle far from its shores. Chinese Navy ships entered waters off Alaska for the first time this week. At the same time, President Obama was visiting. And China continues to militarize man-made islands in the South China Sea, waters the U.S. considers international. We came face-to-face with the Chinese military there on board a U.S. surveillance aircraft this May.
This is the Chinese Navy. This is the Chinese Navy. Please go away quickly.
China's Navy is going to be operating increasingly as a blue water navy around the world, and the United States is just going to have to get used to it.
Though today's ceremony did not mention the U.S., a Chinese company produced this video showing a Chinese attack on forces very much resembling American ones, with an overwhelming Chinese victory.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that China and Russia will jointly defend the truth of history and maintain common victory. He made those comments to the media before his departure for China to attend the V-Day commemoration events. His comments were carried on the Kremlin's official website. Putin added that the two countries will never forget the heroic and courageous fortitude shown by the war generation. Putin pointed out that China and Russia have supported each other through difficult times after the war, and that this has become the foundation on which bilateral relations have been built. He added that Russia-China relations, which are at their highest level at the moment, help to maintain and strengthen global and regional security and stability. He praised China for following a successful path of economic reform and a wise implementation of social policy. He said that the Chinese experience was very valuable and precious for Russia.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin has drafted a bill that aims to eliminate the U.S. dollar and the euro from trade among member states of the Commonwealth of Independent States. A statement from the Kremlin says that Putin submitted to the State Duma the draft federal law which seeks an integrated currency market in the CIS. The statement said that the bill would help facilitate trade in the region and achieve macroeconomic stability. Russian officials say using Western currencies could seriously increase the risks associated with trade, especially at a time when the U.S. and its European allies are in a political row with Moscow over the ongoing deadly conflict between Kiev forces and pro-Russians in eastern Ukraine.
Inside the Vatican walls, Pope Francis told us he is ready for his trip to the United States. And tonight, on the eve of his historic visit, he's making global headlines when it comes to forgiving women who have had an abortion. Declaring today he will allow priests in this upcoming year of mercy to absolve women of the sin of abortion if they repent, in his words, with contrite heart. Saying he's aware there are many women who feel they have no choice. I have met so many women who bear in their heart the scar of this agonizing and painful decision, he wrote. I am well aware of the pressure that led them to this decision. I know that it is a moral ordeal. Tonight, the Vatican making it clear forgiveness for abortion does not mean the Church condones it. And Pope Francis making that clear during our time with him. During our conversation with Americans in 3 different cities, he was listening to a single mother, Rosemary from Los Angeles, who told him this.
I've made some mistakes as a person, as a mother. I felt guilty at times and ashamed.
Gracias, Rosemary.
He thanks her and offers a personal message.
Pero te digo una cosa.
You are a courageous woman, he says, because you brought your daughters into the world. You could have killed them in your womb, but you respected life.
Anda con la frente alta.
Telling Rosemary to walk with her head held high. She wiped away the tears, hugging her daughters after the Pope acknowledged her struggles and her strength.
Pope Francis' stance on social issues controversial within the Church, most recently abortion, have surprised many people. Now, an unprecedented survey finds Catholics' personal views are just as surprising. A Pew survey finds that a majority of Catholics still view abortion as sinful. Church doctrine ranks abortion as grounds for immediate excommunication. But for Catholics surveyed, opposing abortion is not high on the priority list of what it means to be a good Catholic. Also a surprise, American Catholics are split on the issue of gay marriage. And a majority of the Catholics surveyed don't believe it's sinful to use contraception. Pope Francis has said he is looking to build a more inclusive church. The survey appears to back his approach as he heads to the United States for a high-profile visit ahead of a, quote, Year of Mercy.
One of the things that comes screaming out of everything that we see taking place in the world today is this leadership vacuum. That's what I want to talk about today. The leadership vacuum. Can I ask you a question, just rhetorical, just in the quietness of your own heart? Did you ever think, especially for those of you who are older, did you ever think that there would come a day when the United States of America would become irrelevant? Yet, there's no description in the pages of my Bible and your Bible as well that have the United States as a prominent player, as a world power. What happens to the United States? Well, I'll come back to that here in a moment. But I'm of the belief that what's happening right now in the world is exactly what we have described in our Bibles. That at the time of the end, there will be this huge leadership vacuum. Just this last week, al-Maliki stepped down in Iraq. To me, that creates even a bigger vacuum than before. And you know what's interesting is that it seems now that there's even a louder cry for a world leader to come on the world stage and solve the world's problems. I think the world is ripe and ready like never before for the Antichrist to come. And when he does, we're told, we have a description in the book of Daniel, chapter 8, verse 25, that he will deceive and destroy many vis-a-vis peace. Let me read it for you. Daniel 8:25. And this is the King James Version, which I think is the best rendering of this prophecy. And through his policy, interesting word, speaking of the Antichrist, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. And listen, by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the princes, which is speaking of Jesus Christ, but he shall be broken without hand. It'll be a non-contest, so to speak. Would you agree that the world right now wants more than anything and will do anything for peace? So this man, whom I believe is alive and well today, will come on the scene. And as one many years ago was quoted as saying, "Send us such a man, whether he be God or the devil, we will accept him." It's not just the United States that's war-weary. The whole world is war-weary.
Japan's parliament building, protesting for peace.
If I were to describe Japan with one phrase, it would be a peaceful nation. But right now, the unimaginable, the unrealistic is happening, where peace is being destroyed.
The unimaginable could begin in September. That is when the Diet, Japan's parliament, will consider a bill that will allow the nation's self-defense forces to fight overseas for the first time since World War II.
Japan should not become the country that wages a war. Moreover, Japan must build a good relationship with Asian neighbors.
It's been 70 years since China, the U.S., and other allied powers defeated Japan in World War II. U.S. Army attorneys wrote a constitution for Japan that strictly limited its military to self-defense. When Prime Minister Shinzo Abe returned to power, he pushed to expand the role of Japan's military. In July of this year, the lower house of Japan's parliament passed his new security bill, allowing the military to defend its allies, even when Japan itself is not under attack. These protesters want Abe to step down.
It's impossible to get peace by strengthening the military. Abe is lying.
The Abe regime ignores the public opinions just like Hitler. We cannot tolerate this regime any longer.
Violence on the streets of the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, now turning deadly. A grenade thrown from the crowd, killing one soldier, injuring several others. These street battles pit Ukrainian nationalists against the Ukrainian parliament, which just approved giving greater autonomy to the eastern regions of the country, now controlled by Russian troops and pro-Russian separatists. Ukraine's Western-backed president scolded protesters for attacking Ukraine over Russia.
It is very sad that some members of the parliamentary coalition attacked the president and the supreme commander-in-chief of their own country instead of directing their burgeoning energy to counter the external enemy.
Russia has strengthened its hold on the east, and the war has raged on, with more than 6,000 killed since April last year.
Protesters began gathering early on Saturday, playing music and singing close to government headquarters. Security forces have installed additional barricades and barbed wire in preparation. The You Stink campaign was mobilized independently of the big sectarian parties that dominate Lebanese politics. It has blamed the government for failing to solve a crisis in trash disposal, leaving piles of refuse rotting in the summer sun. For the protesters, the mounds of garbage reflect the failings of a state they say is rotten with corruption. Prime Minister Tamam Salam has threatened to resign, a move that could tip the state into deeper political turmoil.
These people Indonesian economy, and they are not happy. Tens of thousands of laborers took to the streets of the capital on Tuesday. The demand, calling on the government to take action on the economic slowdown. The slowdown that has impacted their purchasing power and jeopardized their livelihoods.
We are close to a crisis. With these conditions, companies are struggling, which means all of our jobs are under threat.
The situation around the migrant tent camp in the Hungarian capital threatened to worsen after a group of rowdy football fans turned up at the site. French farmers have gathered for a major strike in Paris. Over 1,000 tractors and thousands of agriculture workers are blocking highways and roads in protest at the hardships their industry is now facing.
They have been protesting now for some months against what they see as a threat to their livelihood and existence. But this is really the culmination of those protests. And although this here behind me looks like a car park of some sort, it's actually the centre of Paris, the Place de la Nation. And it's completely blocked off, as you can see here, by hundreds of tractors. The main road, the side roads are at a complete standstill and have been now for several hours. Many of these drivers would have driven here all day and night to participate in this protest. Now the farmers believe they're really being, their industry is really being strangled here because of supply and demand problems, and of course the sanctions regime, the tit-for-tat sanctions between the EU and Russia, has really had an impact on their industry, and all these combination of factors has really left the farmers in some hot water.
In Baghdad, a massive demonstration was held in the capital's Liberation Square. Thousands more rallied in several cities across the largely Shiite south, following a call from powerful cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. Iraq has witnessed a number of demonstrations in recent weeks. The protests were initially aimed at improving power supply amid a sweltering heat wave. Since then, they have focused more on encouraging Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi to accelerate government reforms, put corrupt officials on trial, and loosen the grip of powerful parties over the state.
So what Abadi has done so far are just casual reforms. It's not the real reforms that most of the Iraqis are looking for. People need real action today, not 6 months from now.
People aren't just protesting over services like water and electricity. It's true that they're important, but there are things that are even more important. People have come out today in their millions as requested by Abadi to authorize him to change or amend the constitution.
No threat will intimidate us, not even the settlers' determination to help the army crack down on us. We'll stand our ground and resist to send our message to the world.
The settlers are getting ready for a war because the number of settlers is increasing in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. They now represent about 20% of the population. They're organizing their ranks so they can create a new state within the state of Israel.
We're moved, very happy to see that the people's struggles have paid off today, because it's public pressure that led him to resign.
We're celebrating the sacrifice, steadfastness, and perseverance of a people that never stopped asking that justice be done.
The resignation of the president is further proof of the strength of the united front fighting for the people of Guatemala. No more corruption in the government.
We're not acting fast enough. I've come here today as the leader of the world's largest economy and its second largest emitter to say that the United States recognizes our role in creating this problem and we embrace our responsibility to help solve it. Of course, we're here today to discuss a challenge that will define the contours of this century more dramatically than any other. and that's the urgent and growing threat of a changing climate. Our understanding of climate change advances each day. This year in Paris has to be the year that the world finally reaches an agreement to protect the one planet that we've got while we still can.
The Vatican City in Rome. A meeting Friday between Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and Pope Francis I to discuss how to promote peace, human rights and sustainable development. The meeting taking place, the Secretary General said,
at a time of test for the human family. Inequality is growing, injustice is prevalent, there is too much intolerance among peoples and faith. All of these aggravate insecurity.
A sentiment echoed by the Pope.
Y en el caso de la Organización Política y Económica Mundial,
regarding the global economical and political organization, there is still a lot to do. An important part of humanity continues being excluded from the benefits of progress and, in fact, set aside as second-class human beings.
The
future Sustainable Development Goals should be formulated and executed with magnanimity and courage for them to reach and have an impact on the structural causes of poverty and hunger.
De la pobreza y del hambre.
Finally tonight here, our exclusive visit with Pope Francis here at the Vatican today. We shared with you his message before his historic visit to the United States. Tonight here, we take you along part of the route he will take, where he will visit when he arrives in America. Our journey to the Vatican and our visit today with Pope Francis. But the Pope's journey is just beginning. In less than a month now, Pope Francis will arrive in the U.S., first to our nation's capital, meeting President Obama at the White House, and doing something no Pope has done before, giving an address to a joint meeting of the United States Congress. Then on to New York City, the mural already going up, Welcome, Pope Francis. Evening prayer at St. Patrick's Cathedral, addressing the United Nations General Assembly, and a mass at Madison Square Garden. And then to Philadelphia for the World Meeting of Families, stopping at Independence Hall. A chance to meet Americans and talk to them face to face. As we know, he's already communicating on Twitter. 22 million followers, one of his most popular tweets, inequality is the root of social evil. A message these students here in Rome say he'll bring to America. Do you think that this Pope is preparing a message for America?
I don't think he's going to hold back, and I hope he doesn't hold back.
Income inequality, immigration.
Income inequality, immigration, racial inequality especially, that's a huge issue right now. He's a voice for those issues right now.
And we met up with American tourists here, couples in St. Peter's Square, excited about seeing the Pope back in America. So different, they say, from his predecessors. What is it about this Pope?
He likes common people.
He's just so friendly and outgoing, just seems like the people's Pope.
The People's Pope. We heard it from so many Americans here. And once asked about what he misses most since his papacy began, Pope Francis said being able to walk tranquilly on the streets and going to a pizzeria to eat a good pizza. Pope Francis missing his trips to the pizzeria, but preparing for his trip now to America.
September the 23rd, Yom Kippur. That's the Day of Atonement. That is absolutely the most holy day in the Jewish calendar. September the 23rd, the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha, also known as the Feast of the Sacrifice, begins. September the 23rd, watch carefully, Pope Francis arrives at the White House to meet with Barack Obama. September the 23rd, the 266th Pope will be meeting with the President of the United States of America on the 266th day of the year. Some have suggested that something is being birthed on that day, since 266 days is the average length of the human gestation period. My. September the 24th, the Pope addresses a joint session of the U.S. Congress. That's never happened before. September the 25th, on May the 14th, 2014, French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius famously proclaimed that we had only 500 days to avoid climate chaos. His time frame of 500 days ends on September the 25th. September the 25th, the Pope will hold Mass in Madison Square Garden in New York City. September the 25th to September the 27th, the United Nations, now listen carefully, the United Nations launches a brand new universal agenda for humanity known as the 2030 Agenda. Now, how many of you have heard of Agenda 21? This is Agenda 21 on steroids. All you have to do, and I've got it right here, this is a good expose on what's going on with 2030. This lays out in detail their plans for a one world government. What they want to do is take all the people in the world, take them off of their expanded properties out here in their ranches and all of that, and gather them together into cities where they can be controlled. According to these one-worlders, we've got too many people on earth. We got too many useless eaters. We got too many human weeds. We got too many mud people. Do you know where all this stuff came from? This came from Charles Darwin through Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, that has 80% of its murdering abortion clinics in black neighborhoods. And now just recently, black pastors in this country, God bless them to their credit, are standing up and they are saying, hold on, you are engaged in black genocide. You're killing off our people. And they are. And these are the patronizing, condescending, elitist in the country who think that they are head and shoulders above you and above the law. And you're watching that play out before your very eyes right now with Hillary and her email server. You're seeing that attitude as it's manifested for the whole world to see. And the fourth estate, as I've told you before, the fourth estate is very important. The first estate is the church. The second estate is the nobility. The third estate is peons. That's us, you know. And the fourth estate is the news media. The reason the news media is so powerful is because they control thinking of the people. They have a profound influence on what you receive in the news and the way they spin it and give it out to you. Political correctness would die tomorrow if the news media did not keep beating its drums. The news media is the great evangelist in this country of political correctness, the fourth estate. And so what we're having in this nation right now are people who have been brainwashed through decades of receiving Darwinism, and they can't even make an analytical examination of anything. And they've gotten to the point now where they are in a dumbed down stupor, because the only thing that most people in the country want now is to be entertained. They want to be amused. You know what the word amuse means? You know what the word muse means? Muse means to think. Amuse means don't think. So I thought it meant entertain. It doesn't have anything to do with entertainment. It has to do with sitting you in front of a box or a screen or something and literally taking control of your mind and putting it in a passive state, and it thinks for you. And what it's doing is brainwashing you all the time. And you're constantly being fed, day in and day out constantly you're being fed this new world order garbage. And the country's ready for it.